So, Ukraine was just invaded by Russia, and it's just been completely insane. There have been, according to the U.S. government, over 160 missiles dropped over Ukraine. There's videos come out of jets flying over people's heads. There's fighting all over the place. The Ukrainian president has announced a state of emergency, and he announced that 137 people died on the first day of conflict, and that his country has been left alone to fight against Russia. Their military said that they had destroyed 30 tanks, 5 planes, and 6 helicopters from Russia in the first day. Now, he says that Russia has marked him as the first number one target. They want to destroy Ukraine publicly by destroying the head of state. We have information that the enemy sabotage groups have entered Kiev. He said that he will stay there. He thinks that this is like some sort of way to like just demoralize the people of Ukraine. Is if they see their leader getting taken out, it would lead to a collapse, creating a vacuum. Speaking of vacuums, a lot of people have been talking about how there's been, a lot of comparisons between Hitler invading Poland and Putin invading Ukraine, and I can see the similarities there. I can understand why people would say that. Personally, I mean, obviously Hitler's worse. That's not uh, really, really a debate, but at this point, I think that we are genuinely have a really high chance, or a lot higher at the very least, chance of entering World War III. Now, a lot of the Russian people don't agree with this. Uh, there's a pretty big protest over in Russia. They've started to get arrested more and more, these protesters, and it's just been a complete mess. I remember seeing a video on YouTube about 30 minutes from the recording of this video, just talking about this Russian citizen saying that they did not want war, and this is something that came from the top, and it's essentially started a Cold War, pretty much. Nobody wants to move against each other because of mutually just assured destruction, which is a good idea. But personally, I don't want to die before I turn 50 or before I turn any age. Honestly, I don't want to die soon or now because other people don't know how to work out other issues that they just don't need to involve other people in. When it comes to this war stuff, there's no reason for this to have blown up into a war. There's no reason for Russia to be attacking Ukraine. But of course, because America is how it is, and instead of focusing on the real issue, that of course being Ukraine and what's going to happen with them and how we're going to deal with Russia, a lot of people have been, you know, talking about politics and stuff. And by the way, just recently, like an hour or two ago, Russia captured Chernobyl, right? They apparently it's all running safe, it's all good, but they've completely gotten all of the radioactive waste that was stored there. Apparently, the site itself could be weaponized. I've heard some people say that it could be like released out into the atmosphere, and that would obviously affect negatively the people of Ukraine, but it could even affect the people of the EU. The EU, of course, is the European Union. So it's just insane to me. But back to what I was saying about America, there have been just people coming out blaming different sides of the spectrum and just will not just chill out for 5 minutes and think about like what would be the point of like fighting over this now. Like this is something that you argue about, you disagree about, at some other time, right? Like not when we might be fighting a war. It feels like people just are trying to drum up controversies, trying to make things worse and worse and worse than they already are. And they're bad enough on their own. In fact, the 25th Amendment is trending on YouTube. People have been calling for Joe Biden to be impeached. I mean, I don't really see why. I don't see what that would do for anybody, really. I don't see the point of it. But hey, I'm not one of these people who has to come out here and say this stuff all the time. So Sean Penn is currently in Ukraine and filming a documentary about the Russian invasion of the, pretty much all of the country. They have been on the border for a while now. I I don't know what's gonna happen at this point. I can't tell. It's genuinely pretty scary. It's really worrying. I'm just, I don't even really come up with a script for this. I'm just spitballing. So I do want to say one more thing before I go. Now, there have been a lot of sanctions going on with the Russian banks and people, businessmen that are going through this stuff. Now, really, this doesn't really affect the upper class of Russia as much as they're trying to get it to. Really, it will affect the lower and middle classes. So they're just kicking them while they're down, essentially, in my eyes. But, I mean, what else can you really do other than all out war? And another thing I want to say is, this is a point I brought up in my video about whether or not we're going to have a World War III a couple weeks ago. But Russia's GDP is not good. You know, they're struggling. In fact, their GDP is, as I last checked, it was half of California's. Now that's not good for a country of that size. Honestly, this whole situation is not looking good for anybody, and I don't think there's going to be any real winners to come out of this. Putin's been threatening a lot of